Hello, third grade, and welcome to lesson 7-3. In this lesson, we're going to work on making bar graphs. So you're still going to be using your tables for information, except instead of making them into a picture graph, you're going to put that information into a bar graph.
How do you make a bar graph? Think about this question during the lesson. Greg made a table to show the amount of money he saved each month. Use the data in the table to make a bar graph on grid paper. A bar graph can make it easy to compare data. First, write a title for the bar graph. What should the title be?
Select your answer.
Now, when you're setting up a title for your bar graph, just like when you're doing for your picture graph, it should be the same title that you have in your data table. So whatever your title in your data table is, it needs to match what you end up putting on the different kind of graph that you use.
The title of the bar graph should be Amount Greg Saved Each Month. Choose the scale. Decide how many units each grid line will represent. What does a scale in a bar graph mean?
So when we're looking at a bar graph or any graph, the scale tells us how much each thing counts for. So over here, we're counting in groups of tens because you can see that it's skip counting from 0, then 10, 20, 30, all the way up until 70.
A scale shows the units used in the bar graph. What units are used in this bar graph?
Now in this bar graph, we can see that what we're measuring is the amount of money. So when we're looking at it, he's counting in dollars. So over here, the unit that we're going to be using is going to be dollars.
Each grid line represents $10. Set up the graph with the scale, each month listed in the table, and labels. Then draw a bar for each month. Why is it important that the label to the left of the scale numbers be there?
Now the labels are really important, and particularly the one on the left side, it tells you how you're measuring and the unit that you're measuring in. So maybe these are groups of $10, maybe they're groups of hundreds, and it tells us the unit that we're using. So are we measuring using money? So is it dollars or cents? Are we measuring using units of length like inches or feet or centimeters? All of these things change the way that you look at the data. If we're measuring, for example, length and we're measuring with feet, feet are much bigger than if we were measuring with centimeters. But if we don't have the unit listed there, we won't know how we're measuring it and we won't have our correct answers. So this label on the left side tells you not only how you're measuring and the scale, but it also tells you the unit that you're using.
It tells what the numbers stand for. What are the labels for the categories and where do they come from? The labels for the categories are January, February, March, and April. They come from the month column in the table. How do you know how long to draw each bar? Each grid line represents $10. Look in the Amount Saved column in the table for each amount. You now can make a bar graph from information contained in a table. During which month did Greg save the most money? Try finding the answer yourself.
Now, if we're going to figure out which month he made the most money, it's easy to look at a bar graph and to see which bar is the tallest. So we can tell right away without knowing the amount that in March he saved the most amount of money and that in January he saved the least amount of money. Now, when you're looking at this graph, you know that it's skip counting by groups of $10. Now, some of our numbers over here aren't in groups of 10, they have 5, so 25 or 65. So for January, since he had saved 25, the line over here stops in between the 20 and the 30, because right halfway between 20 and 30 is 25. And the same thing for March, he saved $65, so it lands between the 60 and the 70. So that's measuring or showing you halfway to that next number. Now let's go ahead and take a look at our notes and then our guided practice. So how do you make a bar graph? Well, you need to use the data from your table. You're going to use graph paper and a ruler. So this is graph paper right here. If you don't have graph paper, you can either print some out online or you can use notebook paper as best as you can. But make sure you're using a ruler to have really neat and organized work. And then make sure that your bar graph has a title, it has labels, and it has a scale. So for example, over here, I put the money saved for a bicycle, and I put the months and the amount saved. So January, February, March, and April. I'm saving money for a bicycle. So in January, I saved $25. In February, I saved $15. In March, I saved $30. And then in April, I saved $10. Now I want to put this information together into a bar graph. So I can see over here that I have a title, money saved for a bicycle, and that matches the title in my data table. Since it's all showing the same information, the titles need to match. I labeled my different sides. So my bottom is the categories, what I'm measuring, and I'm measuring the money saved in January, February, March, and April, and that's measured in months. So I labeled it months. But on this side, this is my scale. I'm putting the amount saved in dollars. So, and here I'm skip counting by tens. So January, I saved $25. So I went up halfway between the 20 and the 30. So this middle line in between 20 and 30 is 25. So I made my bar up to the 25. For February, it was $15. So $15, I went to the line in between the 10 and the 20, and that's the height of my bar for February. For March, I saved $30. So I went up to the 30 line and followed it across and made my bar for March up to the $30. And April was $10. So I only went up to the 10 line and made my bar for April. Now, the reason it's easier to do this on grid paper is because it gives you clear guidelines where you can trace the lines to make a really neat and organized graph. But here you can see I have all the important parts of the graph. I have the title, I have the scale, I have the labels, I have the categories, and I have the bars. Now let's take a look at another example. So here I said, use the data table to create a bar graph. Now here I have favorite activities. So here I have listed the activities, my tally marks, and the votes. So the activities I have listed are biking, soccer, swimming, or jump rope. So for biking, I had 10. For soccer, I got 15. For swimming, I got 20. And for jump rope, I got 5. So I wanted to use this information to create a bar graph. So in my bar graph, I listed my title, which is favorite activity, same as the title from my table. And then I wanted to label my sides. So the bottom is the categories, that's the activities. So biking, soccer, swimming, and jump rope. And the side over here is the number of votes that it got. So I skip counted here by 5s, 5, 10, 15, 20. And then I started to use the information from my data table to be able to create the bars in my bar graph. So for biking, I saw that it got 10 votes. So I made my bar up to the 10 line. For soccer, it got 15 votes. So I went up to the 15 line. Swimming got 20 votes. It went up to the 20 line. And then jump rope only got 5 votes. So that only went up to the 5 line. So all I did was take the information from here and set it up a little bit differently. So it's easy to look at. Right away, you can tell which group got the least number of votes, which group got the most number of votes. So putting information into a pictograph or into a bar graph makes it a lot easier for you to be able to look at the information and make decisions without having to look at the data too closely. So you don't have to sit and take a look and compare the numbers. If you look at a bar graph, you can see right away which one got the most. You can see right away which one got the least. So let's take a look at your guided practice questions. Now, the first guided practice question, let me go ahead and share the screen with you one more time so that you can see it. Your first guided practice question says, explain why the bar for January ends between the 20 and the 30. So this is based on the example we were looking at in our short lesson video. Now we know that it ended between the 20 and the 30 because in January, Greg had saved $25 and the scale that we were using skip counted by 10. So right in between the 20 and the 30 is where you would have 25. For number 2, it says, suppose Greg saved $35 in May. Between which grid lines would the bar for May end? So if he saved $35, then it would be between the 30 and the 40 grid line because in between 30 and 40 is 35. For number 3, it asks, how can you tell how much more Greg saved in February than in April? So between February and April, we're going to take those numbers, we're going to subtract them to find the difference. So we found that 50 take away 40 equals 10. So he saved a difference of $10. And for number 4, it says use the table to complete the bar graph. So you can see the number of people who signed up for different classes, and the classes that were chosen were chess, guitar, painting, and writing. We have the tally marks and then the numbers. So I'm going to go ahead and close the screen share so that you guys can see the data table that I made with those numbers. So the number of people signed up for classes, that's my title. I know it's a little bit squished under question number 3, but I was running out of space on my paper. Over here, we can see the categories at the bottom: chess, guitar, painting, and writing. And on this side is the number of people. So that's my label for this, how many people were signed up for those classes. And I skip counted by ones here. And then I can see chess had 6 people, so it went up to the 6 line. Guitar had 10 people, so that went up to the 10 line. Painting had 7 people, and then writing had 9 people. So I made each one of those graphs or each one of those bars according to the data table, and I made sure to trace across to make sure that I was making my grid lines or my bars in the right place using the correct grid lines. Whenever you're making a bar graph, please do it really carefully. If you have a ruler on hand, definitely use a ruler because it does make your work much more neat and organized, and it makes it a lot easier to read. It also makes it a lot harder to make mistakes if you're using a ruler to trace across and make sure that your lines are all in the right place. That's it for this lesson, 3rd grade. If you have any questions, let me know. Otherwise, I hope you have an amazing day. Take care. Bye-bye.